Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Books and Mortar, where we talk about the books that build us. I know that it's been a little while since my last episode, but I swear it's not you, it's me. Life has just been a little bit hectic, and I think I just needed some time to recover from everything. But we're back now, and happy 2025. And I'm thinking that we make it a good year with the podcasts this year. So my first episode for the year is a book called Confessions of a 40-something Fuck-Up by Alexandra Potter. And this was one of those books that I found by happy accident. I thought that the title sounded really entertaining, so I gave it a try. I bought this book secondhand from the lovely Bookbound ZA. Her name is Andrea, and she's based here in Port Elizabeth. But you can find her on Instagram. Her account name is Bookbound ZA. And if you live in South Africa, she ships nationally, so you don't have a problem. And if you live in the PE area, you can actually collect from her as well. And she wraps the book so nicely. My goodness, it's worthwhile. She also has a wide variety of mostly pre-loved books at very good prices. And I know that some people don't like buying pre-loved books, but as one of the characters in this book says, we don't really own books. We just take care of them until we pass them on to the next person. And I agree, right? Because I think that stories are meant to be shared and passed along to reach as many people as possible. So the protagonist in this book is named Penelope, or aka Nell Stevens, and she's been described as similar to Bridget Jones. And I agree with this. She definitely is, but she has a lot more substance to her. This book made me laugh out loud. It brought tears to my eyes a couple of times. It's made me stop and think about a passage that I just read, and I think that this is what makes a great book. And it was so relatable, not necessarily to the actual situation that she found herself in, but the feelings that go along with this can actually be applied to many different situations that life throws at you. So let me read you the synopsis at the back of the book. A novel for any woman who wonders how the hell she got here and why life isn't quite how she imagined it was going to be, and who is desperately trying to figure it all out when everyone around her is making gluten-free brownies. Meet Nell. Her life is a mess. In a world of perfect Instagram lives, she feels like a fuck-up. Even worse, a 40-something fuck-up. But when she starts a secret podcast and forms an unlikely friendship with Cricket, an 80-something widow, things begin to change. Because Nell is determined. This time, next year, things will be very different. But first, she has a confession. I think just the synopsis is already so relatable to so many of us, because I regularly find myself wondering, how did I get to this point? And sometimes also, what on earth am I doing? Am I doing it right? What is right? Why do so many other women seem to have themselves together, but I fall to pieces once a month because I feel so overwhelmed by life? So it turns out that it's okay to not know all the answers. When I was in my 20s, believe me, I thought that I did. I thought that I knew everything. But now that I'm in my 30s, I realize that I don't, not even close. So Nell takes us on this journey, and the story starts with her telling us about how her relationship fell apart with a guy in California. So they even started a business together, but the business went bust, and so did their relationship. So she decided to go back to London and start over in her 40s. Yikes. Not at 40, in her 40s. So she's already over 40. She makes that point very clear, right? So the idea of going back single, unemployed, and living in her parents' house, sleeping in her old bedroom, was just too much for her. So with a loan that her dad gave her, she decided to find a place to rent in London, which is very expensive. So not just that, she also finds out that her parents have been renting her room on Airbnb and they kind of don't want her occupying it free of charge. But Nell is lucky and she manages to find a flat share in London. So she's lucky, but she's not so lucky because who wants to share a flat in their 40s? I mean, in your 20s, it's great because, I'll make new friends. But when you're older, the idea of sharing a bathroom with strangers is just an absolute nightmare. So she ends up sharing the place with a guy named Edward and his dog Arthur. And Edward is like an eco warrior, and he's constantly on Nell's case about being environmentally friendly, which she's all for, by the way. But when he tells her to turn off the plugs of the appliances when she's not using them and turn off the lights in the room when she leaves, she realizes that they're very different kinds of eco warriors, right? So I also sometimes tend to not turn off lights, but I like a well-lit place, and that's what Nell says as well. She says like she can't live in a dull house because it's really gloomy, okay? But I don't leave room lights on, just like the kitchen and the living room and the areas that I'm in. I also like a bright space. So anyway, she manages to overlook a lot of his peccadillos because he is only really around for 3 days a week. And, well, she honestly has no other choice. The great thing, though, is that her and Arthur become like the best of friends. And I think that he offers her companionship at a time when she really needs it. So at the beginning of the book, she makes a list of what she wants her gratitude list to look like in 12 months' time. And this is it, right? My loving husband, who tells me every day how much he loves me with fresh flowers. Snuggles with our own little miracle, who showed her proud grandparents that Mummy was not a 40-something fuck-up for whom time finally ran out. A successful, high-flying career that provides both satisfaction and a 6-figure salary, which I will spend on lovely clothes I see in magazines and not spend hours trying to find a cheaper version on eBay. A Pinterest-worthy home in which to host lots of lovely grown-up dinner parties for all my friends who are amazed by my flair for interior design and conjuring up delicious, nutritious meals and teasingly call me the domestic goddess. So just as a side note from me, you wouldn't find this one, number 4, on a man's wish list, right? I'm just saying that, like, if women, even if she has all of these other things, but if she is not this domestic goddess, suddenly again, she's not worthy. So then this feeling of strength and calm that comes from doing yoga in my new Lululemon outfits and knowing I am finally where I want to be and I'm not going to die alone in newspaper shoes. So I think she was a bit ambitious, to be honest, about the child and the husband happening in 12 months. She'd have to work really fast to make both of those happen in that time frame. So all of Nell's friends are married with children by the time she comes back to London. And those are the two things that she thought that she would have at this age, but she doesn't. And her friends are not just married. They're doing Pilates, they're running marathons, they're living in beautiful homes. And yeah, they're probably making gluten-free brownies. So what does this make her? A failure? No, right? Of course not. But Nell says that there's a difference between being a failure and being made to feel like a failure. And women who are of a certain age who aren't married or have children are considered failures as women by some people. There's a lot of societal pressure on women to get married and have kids, even if you have a super successful career or if you are doing other things or focusing on other things. The fact that you're not married or have children is the thing that people will focus on. And the fact is, though, is that even if that is what you want in your life, sometimes things don't go the way we think that they will. And she feels incredibly out of place with her friends. Like, they go out a few times with like the multitude of kids to restaurants with play areas that are super noisy, with her friends like unpacking snacks for the kids. And this cracked me up, right? Because I completely get where she's coming from. I am like looking forward to days where I can pick restaurants without considering if there's a play area or like a family bathroom. And yes, those places are noisy, they are messy, and yes, I also pack snacks. So she's a bit overwhelmed because it was her birthday dinner, and then she had to explain to her married friends why she came back to London with her single, childless, unemployed self. So to fight the unemployed issue, Nell reaches out to some of her former colleagues. So she's an editor and she'd worked in publishing previously, but the only thing that comes her way is an offer to write obituaries of notable people, which of course she grabs because Dad's loan won't last forever, right? And this is how Nell met Catherine, aka Cricket, the 80-something widow of a well-known playwright named Monty. So she had to interview Cricket for Monty's obituary, and Cricket just became a ray of sunshine in Nell's life, and they became firm friends. And it's not what you think, right? I mean, that a 40-something-year-old and an 80-something-year-old would actually strike up such a close friendship. But they realize that they share a lot and they can relate to each other, because even though Cricket is mourning her husband, Nell is mourning the loss of a relationship as well. And the loneliness of losing a partner and the feeling of isolation from friends is something that they're actually both experiencing. Cricket, because her friends don't know what to say and how to treat her. And she says that it's just by seeing her friends are reminded of their own mortality. Because remember, they're in their 80s already, right? And Nell, because her friends are married with children and she finds it hard to relate to them. So one thing that Cricket tells Nell, and Cricket tells her a lot of things. She learns a lot of things from Cricket in this book. She actually makes a list right at the end. But she tells Nell that grief isn't linear. And I loved this. I thought that it was such a clever thing to say. Cricket doesn't seem to be mourning Monty in the way that people would expect a wife to mourn a husband. They were, in any case, a very unconventional couple, and they married quite late in life, and they also never had any children. So he was a playwright and she was an actress, and I think that says it all, to be honest. So when Nell meets Cricket, she's painting her walls a bright yellow, and she's in this very cheery mood. But the sadness about losing her husband hits Cricket at random times when she's doing something or she sees something that brings back a fond memory of him and the life that they shared. And then later in the book, she shares her insecurities with Nell. Even though she never seems to have any, she does. She just comes from the generation when they were better at hiding it and getting on with everything. So their friendship continues throughout the book, and it's such a beautiful thing. They're so sensitive towards each other. They're able to listen when the other just needs an ear, and then to be the supportive cheerleader when that's what the other needs. It's a very different friendship to Nell's others, and I think it's one that materialized when she needed it the most. So some specific days and times are harder for Nell than others, like, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Easter, which is actually quite a lot. It's also times when people are posting on Instagrams about their families and partners and what amazing lives they have and how they are so #blessed. And when she feels awful because it's just to her this constant reminder of what she doesn't have. And she wonders where she fits in, because if she doesn't fit into the married club or the mummy club, then where does that really leave her? Which is so terrible, because why are there only 2 clubs? So Cricket tells her that she needs to start her own club, which is not bad advice. So this is how it goes. Turning to me again, her eyes met mine. I was joking when I said start your own club, but there's a lot of truth in that. I was always something of an outsider growing up. I had a very conservative upbringing, but I was allergic to conformity. My parents sent me to Catholic school, but I never felt like I belonged. I didn't believe in God, not their God anyway. I had friends, but I didn't fit in. She pauses, remembering. Then by chance I discovered the theatre and found I wasn't alone, that there were people in the world who were just like me. Strange, weird, wonderful people. People who inspired and challenged me. People who understood me. And do you want to know the best part? I nod, listening. I finally found myself. And in doing so, I found a different kind of faith. Does that make sense? I look across at Cricket, a woman twice my age, and feel a sudden sense of connection. Yes, it makes perfect sense. She smiles, at the well-worn creases around her eyes making her face come alive. What I'm trying to say is, you need to find your own people now. And I love how they connect on such an emotional level, like 2 people with such a vast age difference, who have had such differing life experiences, but now bonding over shared emotions. And at the end of each chapter, right, Nell ends with a gratitude list. And she saw this in a journal and she decided that she would give it a try. And sometimes her gratitude item is as simple as just getting through the day. And I've always been so intimidated by these gratitude lists because I feel like I'm supposed to write something seriously profound every day. But the way Nell does it makes me feel like I can do it too. She doesn't always write the recommended 5 a day. Sometimes it's only 2 or 3. And they're not always profound sentiments. Sometimes they're actually pretty simple. And I think that's the point, really, right? It's gratitude for the small, simple things in your life that may not seem of any importance to someone else. So something that Nell hates is an inspirational quote. And after reading what she has to say about them, I actually agree with her, right? We're bombarded by so many of them on a daily basis on social media that it's actually no longer inspiring. It's just exhausting. So she writes in a chapter, embrace your new life. Don't look back. Every day is another chance to change your life. When nothing is certain, everything is possible. Who doesn't love a daily affirmation, especially when it's written in vintage typewriter font and given a filter? Though, to be honest, the more people post inspirational quotes, the more I worry about them. Here are a few of mine for today. Embrace a freezing cold house. Don't kill your landlord. Every day is another chance to watch grand designs and realize that the couple building their amazing architect-designed eco-house in the side of a mountain are almost half your age. But my favorite has to be, Embrace your sense of humor. Don't ever take yourself too seriously. Every day is another chance to laugh instead of cry. And when nothing is certain, everything is a hell of a lot less scary when you make fun of it. Amen. So Nell ends up going to her parents' place for Easter, where her younger brother shows up with his new pregnant girlfriend and announces that they are engaged to be married. So Nell is, of course, she's ultimately happy for her brother, but she has a bit of a breakdown that night. And luckily, she's actually taken Arthur, the dog, with her to her parents, so he offers her some comfort. And at the same time, she gets a text, with a picture from one of her friends who is in Spain with her husband, wishing her a happy Easter. And this just makes her feel more lonely and inadequate. And at some point, though, her sadness gives way to frustration, and she feels that someone needs to do the antidote for all of these perfect Insta lives and Pinterest houses and yoga poses and handsome husbands. And someone needs to tell how it really is when shit happens and life doesn't work out how you expected. When your life doesn't look like any of that. So she figures that someone should do a podcast about feeling like a 40-something fuck up. And she realizes, hey, that's actually a good idea. So she Googles some tips on how to start a podcast and she starts recording episodes. And the idea is to share her feelings and get it off her chest. But she also hopes that someone out there maybe feels the same way. And it would mean that she's not alone. So something that Nell tries is a dating app, right? But she doesn't love it. She feels like it's not real. Like the people that you talk to are not real. It's only real until you close your laptop or turn off your phone. So nevertheless, though, she matches with a few guys and she goes on a few dates and it does not go well. And she eventually deactivates her account. So there's a chapter in this book that's called It's Complicated. And I'd like to share this one. So the chapters in this book actually aren't very long, which is great because you keep telling yourself, okay, just one more. But then it's 10 chapters later and you're still going. Or is that just me? Okay. Anyway, so this is a chapter called It's Complicated. Tonight I watched the news at 10. It should be renamed The Bad News at 10. It was one horrible headline after another. All around the world is in chaos. There's so much suffering, so much terror and injustice. The refugee crisis, our oceans filled with plastic, climate change, animal cruelty, gun and knife crime, the list is endless. But it's not just the news headlines. I watched David Attenborough's new documentary the other night and it's hard not to despair. As a human being, when I see these things, I suffer the expected emotions, horror, fear, sadness, but also a sense of shame. And not just shame at how we are treating the inhabitants of our planet, but shame that my own problems are completely insignificant when held in context. How can I wake up with the fear when I'm laying in bed safe and warm and there are people out there without food or shelter? How can I look in the mirror and feel gloomy about my saggy knees when women younger than me are dying of cancer? And it's a privilege to age. How can I feel sad about not finding my happy ever after when so much of our planet is being destroyed? And how can I even concern myself with my faltering career and failed love life when we have Brexit and Trump? In short, how dare I complain about my life when I have so much compared to so many? The answer is I don't know, truly. I know all these things to be true, and yet I still feel all these other things. They jostle alongside each other like the paradox that life so often is. For so much of the day, I forget about the big stuff. Like most people, I'm just focused on getting through each day and the small stuff that affects my life and those closest around me. But then I'll hear about some tragedy or watch the news and suddenly I'm reminded again. I watch a father sobbing at a news conference because the police have found the body of his missing daughter, or hear about a friend of a friend who has just been diagnosed with something awful, and I swear to myself I'll never complain about anything ever again. But of course I do. We all do. Before you know it, you're annoyed with the person who pushed in front of you in the queue, or that your train is late, or gutted because he didn't text back, or someone else got that promotion at work. Does that make you selfish? I think it just makes you human. If getting older has taught me one thing, it's that I feel so many conflicting things about so many things, and to negotiate or stifle any of them doesn't make them go away. Emotions don't necessarily have a moral compass. Feelings can't be shamed into disappearing. Suppressing and ignoring them will only make them come back to bite you in the therapist's chair. Because this is what I've learned. I can feel like I don't know what the hell I'm doing and refuse to look in mirrors with overhead lighting and still go on the women's march and roar like a mofo. I can weep for that father who lost his daughter and pray for the friend I don't know. and a few days later be scrolling and despairing that I'm not taking beach selfies with my handsome husband. And I can marvel at a sunset and think how lucky I am and wake up in the night with the fear. Because life is complicated, and so are we. I'm grateful for, number one, everything I have and always counting my blessings, which is very different from the humble brag of feeling #blessed, even when things aren't going so great. Number two, the latest episode of my podcast in which I get to confess all this stuff, though I doubt anyone is even listening and I'm just talking to myself and getting everything off my chest. Still, look at it this way, at least it's cheaper than therapy. Number three, the funny cat videos which always make me smile, even when the world is collapsing around my ears. And I really liked that because we're living in a world where there's so much tragedy going on a daily basis. Like minute to minute, people are dying. And yet we are concerned about the small things that just affect us. But we're humans and that's what we do. I don't think that our brains are actually able to keep all of the big stuff in it all the time, because I think that it would affect our mental health in very, very profound ways. But no, like she said, I don't think that it makes us selfish. It just makes us human. So there's another chapter that's called Be Happy. And I would like to share that one with you as well. So some of these chapters are like literally a page, not even a page. So they're nice and easy to read. Okay, so this one is called Be Happy. Am I the only person in the world who's sick of being told to be happy? This morning I woke up feeling a bit crap and looked at my phone. Be happy, choose joy, find your bliss, and felt even more crap. Can't we just be allowed to feel a bit blur sometimes without this constant pressure? Max certainly isn't happy right now. Cricket wasn't feeling joyful when she cleared out Monty's clothes. And bliss to me right now would be something to take away this awful PMS and crawling back underneath my duvet. Sometimes life is crap, and wrapping it up in an inspirational quote isn't always going to make you feel better. On the contrary, sometimes it just makes everything feel worse. Take the other day, for example. I was reading another online article about how important happiness is and all the different ways you can achieve it. But reading it just made me feel depressed, which is a bit ironic when you think about it. I feel like there must be something wrong with me because as hard as I tried, I wasn't feeling happy. Even worse, none of the author's suggestions helped either. So then I wasn't just abnormal, I was a failure too. See, that's why I get annoyed. We're encouraged to be our true authentic selves, but being told to feel happy when you're just not feeling it only encourages us to be the exact opposite. Life can be wonderful, but it can also be scary and hard. We should be free to feel sad or gloomy or just downright bloody miserable without feeling like there's something wrong with us. Because sometimes happiness isn't a choice. Sometimes no matter how hard you try, you can't find joy, which is why I've decided to stop beating myself up by desperately seeking happiness and give myself the permission to feel exactly how I feel when I feel it. In fact, maybe it's not happiness we should be looking for after all, but acceptance. I'm grateful for taking the pressure off myself, knowing there are going to be moments in life when you'll feel upset or scared or unhappy, just like there are times when you'll feel joyful and amazing and happy. All those wonderful doctors and professionals and therapists who are always there if it's not just about feeling fed up for a while, but something much more than that. Being happy today, and it had nothing to do with a motivational quote, though I confess there was a rather beautiful sunset involved. We're very hard on ourselves, aren't we? And I think it's because of all the Instagram perfection that we're bombarded with all the time that we feel even like this subconscious pressure to be Instagram perfect too. But I loved this chapter because of the idea of just accepting ourselves and giving ourselves permission to feel what we feel when we feel it without the pressure to push it away and to just be happy. And another thing cricket teaches Nell, which stayed with me, was don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Essentially, don't let the idea of being perfect blind you to the good. So oftentimes we tend to be dissatisfied with ourselves and our lives because we're striving for perfection. And as a result, we're then unable to see all the good that is actually in our lives. Like even in other people, like when we're looking for partners, we look for the perfect person. But in doing so, we can actually overlook so many great and amazing people. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Then Nell receives a bit of shocking news. she may be perimenopausal. For Nell, of course, who wants a family, this is really not good news. And she says, of course, I realize that this is just a new stage of life, and one that, if all this midlife stuff is to be believed, I should be embracing. But what if you're not ready for this new stage? What if you haven't even reached the old stage yet? Even if you're not sure about having kids, it's comforting to know you've got options. No one wants to be the woman for whom time ran out. You want to be the one making the decisions. Sitting on the fence is one thing, but what happens when the fence is taken away from you? Do you jump off joyfully or fall crashing to the floor? I don't know, but I'm sure someone has written an article about it, because of course it's a free-for-all when it comes to women and the issue of children. I've lost count of the number of articles I've read about the perils of being a teenage, single or older mom, the warnings from experts against focusing on your career and leaving it too late versus the shaming of teenage pregnancy. For young women today, to freeze or not to freeze, that's now the question. And let's not forget the endless debates about those who choose not to have children. Everyone has an opinion about it. It's quite strange, really, when you think about it, because we just accept it as normal. For years, I've been told as a woman, my 35th birthday was to be spent panicking as my fertility threw itself off a cliff. While if you believe everything you read, turning 50 appears to hold the joys of dealing with the menopause. I can't wait. Meanwhile, men get to buy a sports car and a leather jacket. So that just says it all again, doesn't it? Like, women really go through a lot in life, and don't forget, menopause can last up to 10 years, right, before symptoms settle down. I think this shocked her even more. So there's a lot happening in Nell's life, right? And then cricket does an amazing thing, and she springs a ticket to Barcelona on Nell. She wants to go and scatter Monty's ashes in Barcelona, and well, not in Barcelona, but in Spain, and she wants Nell to go with her. And I think the biggest things that Nell learns on this trip is that the best things in life are those that are unplanned, and letting go of your past to finally be able to embrace your future with both hands. I think that for me is probably something that I need to learn, is the unplanning. Cricket tells her, they're sitting and they're having a bit of a conversation, and I think this is after they've scattered Monty's ashes already. And so they're sitting and Cricket tells her, I am 81 years old, and I've learned if there's one gift you can give yourself in life, it's the freedom and courage to say, I don't know. Because I let you into a secret. You don't have to know. You don't have to know how you feel or what you want or if you're happy or if you're sad. Life is full of choices and decisions, and there's so much pressure on us to make all the right ones. But what if we don't? What if we have doubts and misgivings? What if we make mistakes and contradict ourselves? She looks at me, her eyes shining. What if we try our best and fail anyway? As her words peg out before me, I think about myself and everything that's happened. What then? Should we feel bad about ourselves? Why not just accept that we don't know? Because if you accept that, my dear girl, it will give you such immense freedom. It will allow you to change your mind, to take a different path, to grab opportunities that come your way that you might never have thought of, to be impulsive instead of being stuck, to stop feeling guilty. Cricket looks at me, her face imploring, to stop feeling scared. I don't know. I sniff hard, wiping away the tears that are spilling down my cheeks, turning this new concept around in my head, looking at it, embracing it. How do I feel? What do I want? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Gently, Cricket presses the piece of paper back into my hand, and I gaze upon it, at what was once my imagined future. For so long I've been keeping the secret, but now I realize it's been keeping me stuck, keeping me from changing my narrative from one of fear and failure. I look out across the horizon at this vast, wide open space, and I feel very small. In my hands I feel the paper fluttering in the breeze, all the sadness I've kept buried deep inside, all the ashes of my past waiting to be carried away on the wind. And then I let go. So, somewhere in between all of this, Nell checks her podcast stats, and she realizes that it's actually really taken off. She has a couple of thousand downloads, and she's super stoked. And then comes Halloween, and Halloween is a bit of a turning point for Nell, right? So she has all this while felt very envious of her friends for having essentially exactly what she wants in her life. But she comes to realize that even though their lives all look perfect, it doesn't mean that they actually are. Her friend actually breaks down during a Halloween party, and she tells them everything that she feels is wrong in her life. So this is how it goes. I'll have another sparkling water, sighs Michelle, reaching for the bottle of San Pellegrino. Some pathetic looks flash across the table. He's gorgeous. You must feel very blessed, says Annabelle. Yes, she nods, taking a sip of water, and exhausted. How are you feeling? I ask, catching her eye. We've exchanged a few texts, but I haven't seen her since Tom was first born. Honestly, rocking Tom with one hand, she puts down her glass with the other to tuck a strand of hair back into her ponytail. Overwhelmed? Old? Struggling to recognize my life anymore? There's a slew of supportive comments and she smiles ruefully. Don't get me wrong, I love Tom so much it hurts. She glances at him now asleep in his car seat. His small fists curled up to his face and her eyes light up. But this isn't how I imagined it was going to be in my 40s. I thought by now it'd be sorted out. The kids would all be at school, the mortgage would be almost paid off. She turns back to me, but she's got the attention of the whole table. I was looking forward to getting my life back, using my brain again. I even got the application forms to retrain as a counselor. Me getting pregnant again and Max losing his job was never part of the plan. Tom gives a little whimper in his sleep and she strokes his head. Now we're back to nappies and sleepless nights. The house isn't big enough. It's never tidy enough. I would kill for a kitchen like this with surfaces you can actually see. She glances at Fiona, who looks suddenly guilty at having clean surfaces. And we've had to remortgage, so we'll probably be 100 before it's paid off at this rate. Having begun at a normal volume, Michelle's voice is growing louder and increasingly more urgent, as if now she started talking she can't stop. More than that, I feel like if I do one thing, I'm failing at all the other things, because no way am I going to get through my to-do list. It's like I'm playing catch-up all the time, like somehow I'm back at square one, whereas everyone else's lives are all sorted out. Flinging her arm out, she gestures animatedly around the table. I mean, look at all you lovely ladies. You're all so thin and gorgeous and in control of your lives. And look at me. Her eyes are brimming now. My husband's unemployed. My kids are feral. My house is a tip. I'm going to be 60 when Tom leaves school and I can't even laugh about it all rather than cry because if I do, I'll pee myself. Momentarily stunned after this outburst, we're all silent. You know, I can't relate to that exact situation, but I can relate to a lot of what she's saying. And yeah, it does get overwhelming. And you do sometimes wish that things were just easier. And you do look at other people and you wonder, how are they managing to do it? And I'm not. And you feel like you're failing and you feel like you're never going to catch up and that you're always going back to square one. And it's terrifying, hey? And I think having friends who can understand you and accept you without judging you helps a lot. So after this outburst by Michelle, Nell's other friend Holly pulls out her phone and she tells them all about this great new podcast that she's been listening to. And doesn't Nell just get the surprise of her life when she realizes that it is her podcast that her friends are listening to? And they're relating to it so well, and they're raving about how great it is and raving about all of their insecurities and perceived flaws, which Nell just cannot believe. Like how other mothers scare them because they seem so in control, how they feel guilty about not exercising enough or visiting their parents often enough, or how their peers seem to be doing so much better in their careers than they are. And they eventually realize that it's Nell's voice, and they're so impressed with her. And she tells them that she thought that she was the only one who felt this way about her life. And she now realizes that everyone has their own shit and insecurities in their lives. And now that they've really opened up to each other, she understands that she's actually found her tribe after all. It's the sharing of experiences, I think, that really help us to bond as human beings. And this is why reading and sharing stories is so important. It makes us feel like we're not alone. So for all of us, it seems life isn't easy, and the lesson I've learned is that you're not messing up if life hasn't worked out how you expected. Because real life is messy and complicated. Shit happens. One size doesn't fit all. Remove the filters and the hashtags and the motivational messages, and we're all just as scared and confused as the next person. We're all just living our life, and it might not tick all the boxes or look Instagram perfect, but that's okay. And this is so true, isn't it? That progression in life is not just the steady upward curve. There are some serious dips that go along with it, but I suppose we always have to have hope and believe that eventually the trajectory will change and start going up again. So maybe in the meantime, just don't think about it too much and live your life, because that's likely when you'll find things getting better. It's like Cricket told her that it's okay to not know, and it's when you don't know that you can actually then start doing things differently, make different choices, and take other opportunities, because you're not as scared of the outcome anymore. And it really strikes a chord with me also, because like it says, things in life don't really go the way you think it would, but you just have to believe that things are going to get better, and it's okay to not know, so that we can then maybe take a bit of a different path to the one we thought we should be on. So sometimes progression doesn't look the way you thought it would, but that doesn't make that progression any less significant. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So in the book, tragedy strikes at this point. And Nell's dad is in a car accident, and she gets that dreaded midnight phone call. But thank goodness he pulls through and he's okay. But like, it obviously scared her half to death. But she learned that she is stronger than she thought she was. So throughout this book, Nell has learned a lot of things. First, you decide how you age. Then, number 2, friendship can blossom in the unlikeliest of places. Number 3, happiness can be found in the unlikeliest of places. She's stronger than she thought she was. Just because people's lives look perfect doesn't mean that they are. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. To be grateful for anything, even if it's just breathing and getting through the day. And then turns out the life she thought she wanted was not the life that she needed. So this was an amazing book, right? And I highly recommend it. It's a book that you can read at different stages in your life. And I think that that's something really special. So I've just given you like an overview of the story here, but there are a lot more details to discover. So if you decide to give it a read, you're looking at about 506 pages of paperback that you are not going to want to put down, okay? It got a 4.06 rating on Goodreads, and I rated it 5 stars. Like, just there it is, you know. There's also a sequel called More Confessions of a 40-something fuck-up, which I will definitely be reading. And if you've read this book and you want to share some opinions, please leave me a comment on one of the listening platforms. Or on Instagram, I am Raz the Reader. It's R-A-Z the Reader. Or on TikTok, the TikTok account is called Books and Mortar. Or Facebook or X, where I go as Razia Gaida. So that's R-A-Z-I-A Gaida. I'm so bad with X and Facebook though, hey, so like if you want to communicate with me, I would like really recommend Instagram, or you can send me an email at booksandmortar2024@gmail.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you. So that's another episode of Books and Mortar, where we talk about the books that build us. Thanks so much for joining me, and until next time, goodbye.